Hi, my name is Al Souza, otherwise known online as Fuzzypup. A while ago I made a video that put together discipline psychology and poker tells. I got some decent feedback from it, but a couple of pros asked that if I could break down that video um, into more specifics. And they both liked it. So I decided that I'm going to take that single video that I made and really put it out in detail. The first one that you're watching right now is for discipline. I'm going to make one for psychology, one for body language and poker tells later, and possibly a fourth one that I'll discuss at the end. So this is my video connecting the body and mind, positive mental and physical practices for the poker brain. So we'll start off with who the hell is Fuzzypup? Well, I started playing about when everybody saw Moneymaker come on the TV. A lot of my play has been live games and live multi-table tournaments. I've also played online cash. I have not had that much experience with online multi-table tournaments. I made $100,000 in my first 4 years, and I paid taxes on all of it. So I guess if I made so much, why am I not rich? My bankroll went to a severe family crisis, which pretty much wrecked me mentally. So I actually had to quit poker for 2 years. I've been playing for about 7 now. Why am I qualified to do this presentation? Well, my background is a lot in history, philosophy, study of psychology, education, and sales. I've also did a little bit of study on brain physiology. I like watching people. I like studying people. I like seeing what makes them tick and how food affects them. I also study nutrition. Everything that I will talk about in this video, I have tried myself or experienced just to see how good or bad it is, or what the effects, positive or negative, have. So my experience in this kind of field is pretty extensive. So let's continue. If you watch my first video, you'll be familiar with this, the poker pyramid. This is how I see poker. At the very top is luck, which has very little to do with your win rate over your lifetime. Under that you have psychology and math, with math being the more dominant of the two. At the bottom is discipline. And it doesn't make a difference how good you are at math or how good you are at soul reading. If you don't have discipline, you're not going to succeed in poker. One of the world's best poker players, Stu Unger, died with $900 in his pocket. And he was considered one of the best at the time. He died of a drug overdose. So it goes to show you that lack of discipline doesn't take you very far. First thing I'm going to hit on before we get into the discipline part of the video is luck and variance. Many people will think I'm crazy for saying this, but I feel when people have a large downswing for a large amount of time, it is not luck. It is your own fault. From my experience, I have never had a downswing that lasted more than 10 or 20,000 hands online that wasn't directly related to something I was or was not doing or realizing. And I've been playing for a very long time. I have seen bad swings in live games. That can happen pretty easily, or good swings. But I think this all has to do with you and has nothing or not much to do with luck. So I made a little graph below, a little picture, demonstrating my thought process on this. On the far left, you have basically luck. It accounts for 1.5% at most of a poker player's lifetime winnings. That's what it adjusts. After that, they have something called the mojo zone. You can believe it, you cannot. Maybe you have, it consists of bringing a lucky charm to your poker games, or, thinking the cosmic strings are in alignment, or thinking it's a bad day to do it, or you just have a bad feeling. Some people believe in it, some people don't. After that comes your physical and mental disposition at the time. How are you feeling? Are you in pain? Are you worried? Do you have family matters? Do you have kids? Do you have debt? All those things impact your game. After that, how are you playing? Are you tilting? Are you tilting easily? Are other people noticing what's going on with you? Are the good players adjusting? Are the bad players adjusting? Yes, bad players do adjust. So, when all these things add up, in my opinion, it adds up exponentially. So if you don't catch the little nuances of what's going on and you adjust yourself, you don't make that realization, which is the big light bulb, then you will have a downswing. a long extended downswing, and that's about it. I mean, that's how I look at it. Now, the interesting part about this is that realization can either hurt or hinder you. Like there are some occasions where you notice, let's say you play live a lot and you've been running pretty hot for a couple sessions, and you've run into a couple regulars there that only saw you for those 2 sessions, and so they have an opinion of your play that is one way, that is not normally how you play. You've just been running hot. Well, if you make that realization, you could take advantage of it. Poker is fluid, and it's not a full information game. So if they think you're playing one way, and you adjust how you think they think you're playing, then you can actually continue that steady upswing, which is the beauty of this. And of course, on the other hand, realizing when you're on a downswing that's your own fault is very important. For example, I have known some bad players that are very passive and very, they just call you down on the river. They don't raise without the nuts. But in some games, when certain players have had really, really bad luck, these bad players adjust. And they decide it's not his lucky day, and they grow some stones, and they decide to bluff him a hand. Well, let's take a game like 2-5 no limit. Well, all they got to do is bluff you out of one medium pot where they normally wouldn't, and they would normally maybe call on the river, fold, or whatever. Oh, you just lost a pretty good amount of money right there. So think about sitting at a casino, and one bad player makes one move on you per hour because they think you're unlucky. That's pretty much your win rate sometimes. So these are all things to realize. So with that in mind, we're going to start discipline. Now I put some things that I find very important about discipline up here. Nutrition, research, age, exercise, sleep, and tilt control. To me, those are the fundamentals. There are a lot of other factors in it, but I think these are the most important. So we're going to start off on nutrition. The right type of food is going to maximize your brain power. Your body functions. Whatever you put in your body affects your body and your brain, for better or for worse. Foods break down in your system. They provide nutrients and energy to your brain. Your brain is a large biochemical computer. You want to eat also the right amount of calories. You don't want to overeat or undereat. And you don't want to give yourself too little nutrition. Everything in moderation. So what's a proper diet for poker? Well-balanced meals, reasonable portions, sustainable energy foods. And the type of food that you eat totally matters. So let's figure out, well, what's in our foods. So we're going to start off with fats. Everybody knows what fats are, but you don't necessarily know exactly what each type of fat is. Everybody knows what trans fat is. That is the killer. That's the one that clogs your arteries, lowers your HDL cholesterol, which is your good cholesterol, and raises your LDL, which is your bad cholesterol. Saturated fats raise your LDL cholesterol, so those are the bad fats. People don't realize, though, that unsaturated fats are actually the good fats for you, and they actually help you. So in these slides, the items that I list with little green accents on them, they are good. They are the stuff that's good for you, and the ones with the red are the ones that are bad for you. So let's go over unsaturated fats. Monounsaturated fat enhances the electrical processes in the brain, basically makes you run faster. And polyunsaturated fats help your memory. While, on the other hand, saturated fats and trans fat do just the opposite. They slow the electrical processes in your brain, which makes you take longer to think something through. And that's not good. Let's move on. Proteins and carbohydrates. Proteins are the building blocks of your brain's network. Your brain has neurons and synapses that develop, and they send information between each other, and they're all electrical impulses. Proteins help build that brain matter that allows you to store more information, think better, think more clearly, critically think, everything that goes with the brain. Complex carbs are your brain power plant. They are like that little nuclear reactor next to it. They provide a constant time-release flow of energy going to your brain and going to your body, so you can keep a steady state, which is very, very important in a very long tournament. Simple carbs, you notice those are in red. They're the brain power spike. They're like a lightning bolt from the sky. They will give you a lot of energy really quick, but once that breaks down, you will fall into a slumber. You will want to go to sleep, and your body will react otherwise. Now, I am not a biochemist, but I believe with simple carbs, they create that energy spike and they create all the sugars in your blood. And your body can't handle all that sugar, so it has to create insulin to protect you against the sugar. And that insulin is basically what puts you to sleep. The sugar is used up very fast. Complex carbohydrates, you can imagine, is a complex biochemical puzzle, and your body has to take it apart. It takes time to take it apart because it's complex. It's like a puzzle that has a lot of pieces. So as it takes off a piece, it gives you energy. While a simple carb is like a very simple puzzle. It just has two pieces. You just rip it apart and go to the next one. That super spikes your system. And if you don't use all that energy, then that's when your body compensates for it, and that's when people go to sleep. Food examples for all these. Let's look at proteins. There's skinless chickens, eggs, and legumes. Legumes are beans if you didn't know. Complex carbs. Some fruits, not all. Whole grains. Very, very important whole grains and legumes. Now, if you play live games, maybe you don't want to eat that many beans because I'm sure it'll create some uncomfortable situations at the table. Your unsaturated fats, brain accelerators. Think of these as basically a slick oil. Olive oil, salmon, nuts, avocado. Those are all examples of unsaturated fats. Those are good for you. They clear out your arteries. Simple carbs. Everybody knows what corn syrup is. It's in everything that we eat. Fruit juices. Well, you might be thinking, well, it's fruit. No, it's not. The good stuff about fruit is the actual stuff that you have to chew. The juice that comes from it is just what they call fructose sugar. So, and that burns the same way as sucrose sugar, which is regular refined processed sugar. It is slightly better, but still you should not have fruit juices when you're sitting at a table. White foods. White foods count potatoes, white rice, white pasta, white bread. Potatoes are starch, they convert to sugar. The other white foods, they convert to sugar. They all convert to sugar. So you can imagine the effect of having a cheese pizza and then go play and eat. So you have white bread, and let's say you ate 4 slices because you're a young man and you're hungry. That's all that white bread that gets converted to sugar. And you have cheese, which is fattening. And imagine the effects of both of them. So one spikes you up and puts you to sleep, and the other one slows your brain processes. Honey, even though it's natural, it is a sugar. Saturated fats and trans fats. Includes meats, dairies, desserts, fried anything. That type of stuff you really want to avoid. If you are eating at a casino, try to avoid eating meat. Eat chicken instead for your protein, or vegetables for your protein. Because even though at home you can get lean meat, they're not going to do that at a casino. They're looking for profit, so they're going to buy the cheapest meat they possibly can. Something here I put together from the website at the bottom of the slide is called the Glycemic Index. What this means is how each food spikes your sugar, gives you a sugar level that's high or low. So the items I have on these lists is green, as you can see under the beans in the center bottom category. They are all in the green. They're all pretty good. They have a complex carbs, so they break down slowly. Their sugar levels are low, so they're not going to spike you, then put you to sleep. All other objects, like in the cereals, which is the second column, like corn Chex, corn flakes, Crispix, those type of cereals have a high degree of sugar. So they are going to give you those spikes. That's something you want to avoid. Look at the fruits. You notice that dried dates have a very high glycemic index. That's one of the fruits you shouldn't eat. But things like grapefruit, pears, and strawberries are okay to eat because they have a low glycemic index. This directly impacts how the sugar is in your system. So you want to eat the green, you want to avoid the red. As you can see in the middle column, potatoes, they are very high. While white rice on the far right column, very high. Whole grains, whole grain wheat, very low. And at the bottom, check out the website. It has more information on your brain and how food affects it. Very, very good information. Drinks. Water is the best substance for you, period, end of story. I don't want to hear anything else. You want to avoid sodas. You want to avoid Red Bull. You want to avoid Gatorade. Gatorade is very good if you are doing heavy physical activity, but it is not good if you're going to be sitting down and playing poker. Your body should only have a certain amount of processed sugars a day. So let's take a look at the bad over here. The Red Bulls, 26 grams of sugar, 28 grams of carbs. It's a 9-ounce drink, so it's not that big. Coca-Cola, 39 grams of sugar, 12-ounce drink. Doesn't seem that much. The good, water. Coffee, if you need to, is a pickup. Maybe you're falling sleepy a little bit, you can use coffee. And as a guideline, coffee has more caffeine than an espresso. Green tea has more caffeine than black tea, and green tea has less than an espresso. Black tea is the bottom of the caffeine chart here for those four type of drinks. So coffee's at the top, espresso next, green tea next, black tea at the bottom. If you are going to use a sugar because you can't help yourself and you must have a latte, use agave nectar. Do not use sugar. Now, from my last video, I said agave nectar is good for you. I found some recent articles that state that it acts the same way as sugar affecting your liver. But it reacts in a different kind of way. It raises your triglycerides, which is not good. So, don't use it in the long term. But agave has one advantage that sugar does not have. Agave burns very slow. How do I know? I have tested it myself. I've tried to have coffee with sugar, or coffees that were made out of cookies that were made out of sugar, and cookies and coffee that was made with agave. There is a difference. So if you got to have that latte and you got to put sugar in it, put agave in it. So after looking above with the Red Bull and the Coca-Cola, and considering how much sugar is, what should you have a processed sugar a day? 24 grams. Doesn't seem like much. The upper end is 40 grams. Different places vary with what their opinion is on how much processed sugar you have a day. But if you just keep in mind, have water only when you are playing, have water only when you're at a casino, and if you get a little sleepy, have some coffee. That's all you got to keep in mind. Forget the rest of the drinks. Food labels. When you go to the supermarket to buy your own food, don't look at the front, look at the side cover and the ingredients. This will tell you far more information about what the item is than reading the front. Sometimes, and also pay attention to your ingredient levels, sometimes the serving sizes are off, like in the example I have here. Sometimes foods look good, but the serving size is higher. Just 12 grams of sugar per 4 ounces. Well, that's 36 grams in a 12-ounce bottle. That's actually really high sugar content. Tricky wording on the ingredient label. For example, you should, remember how I mentioned how white foods are bad? You should be eating whole grain foods. You will see a lot of products that'll tell you they're whole grain and their ingredients really aren't. They're like maybe a little bit of whole grain, or they're modified whole grain. They just did a little trick on the wording. True whole grain foods have whole wheat flour in them or whole wheat grain in them as their very first ingredient. Why is that important? The first ingredient is also the major ingredient in the product. The first ingredient has to be 50% or more of the total food. Anything else after that can be anywhere from 1% to 49%. So if you see enriched flour as the first ingredient, and then whole wheat flour as the second, and there's a list of 40 ingredients after that, you have no idea what percentage that food is really whole wheat flour. But you are certain that the first 50, that half of it is white flour. So keep that in mind. There's a little link there about the Whole Grains Council, so you can identify what are good whole grain products. Whole grains, remember, are a slow energy burner. They give you complex carbs that burn slowly in your body. It is what you want to play. So, you're at the casino. Excuse me, I have a cold. What can you do to get good foods? First off, bring your own snacks. Almonds are one of the best snacks that you can have. As always, eat them in moderation. If you can, bring your own water. Buy like a little coffee mug or something that you can bring there. I have a Conseco mug, which are spill proof. They're great. I put water in it. That way I don't have to buy water and tip the waitress. Drink your own water. Research places that are good to eat before playing. There are some places that actually are good. At your casino, ask for alternatives in the restaurant meals. Okay, or at the restaurants themselves. You know, a lot of places will have a whole grain bread or a whole grain rice. So just pay attention. Just don't run over to the next fast food restaurant and eat something awful and ruin your day. So, talking about eating out of fast food, that's our next subject here. Places to avoid. Burger King, McDonald's, Arby's, Jack in the Box. Should I go on? No. It's kind of obvious that basically any place with a drive-thru is not good for you. Anything that looks like fast food is fast food. And no matter what they tell you about their good items, I would just avoid it. I don't want to pick through that place. I want to go to something that's acceptable. What is acceptable then? With correct choice. Chipotle, Panera, Jason's Deli, those kind of places are acceptable. You could get whole grain foods there. You could order a custom. You can get soups. You can get vegetables. Those are the places I eat if I go to a casino when I leave. There's a link there that you can go to take a look at places and how they are. So pick correct places with correct choices. If you go to Chipotle, for example, and you want to have a burrito, have it without white rice. Have it with the beans. Have it with the guacamole, the lettuce, the mild salsa, or the hot one if you want, and chicken. That's an excellent selection. But on a side note, you can actually have white rice with it. In a sense, the rest of the foods kind of cancel out the white rice. Normally, I wouldn't do it, but if you must have your white rice, do it that way. At restaurants, ask for whole grain and substitutes for questionable size. Ask for veggies instead of potatoes. Whole grain rice instead of white rice, for example. Rice pilaf is not whole grain. Fancy rice is not whole grain. So pay attention to those kind of things. How the food affects your brain. Some of you might be visual learners like I am, so I made this little chart. So I put on here the blue lines are focus, the red lines are alertness, the green lines are operation. Focus is trying to track everything at the table, keeping an eye on everybody, seeing what they're doing, paying attention to your game. Alertness is basically staying awake so you can keep focused. Operation is doing calculations, thinking through a hand. So on focus, you see that the complex carbs do really well on that. They keep that sustained energy, and they keep you in the game. They keep you at your prime. They keep you looking at everything. Now, mind you, this doesn't take into account brain fatigue. Just like your body, your brain needs a rest. Saturated fats do just the opposite. They rob you of focus. It's a lot harder for you to focus when you're eating fats. So when you have a big stuffed meal that's full of fat and delicious things, like a heavy steak, you just want to sit down on the couch and vegetate and watch TV. Well, there's a reason for that. Alertness. Alertness ties into focus. The complex carbs keep your steady state of alertness. The simple carbs, while they might give you an enhanced state of alertness, and initially they will drop you down if you notice the red line of simple carbs. Now, one note on this is that I found that simple carbs can do this to you. While you might have a super heightened state of alertness, you will also spaz on your hands and make decisions too quickly and not make the right decisions. We will get into that a little bit later. Operation, performing calculations. Remember how we said unsaturated fats, they make your brain work faster. They're the memory enhancers for your brain. Oh, look at it right there. It keeps you on a nice steady level. While saturated fats do the opposite. They make your brain slow down, and you can't think as effectively. So, proteins on top, trans fat on the bottom. Very obvious choice over here. You want proteins to build your brain. You want to avoid trans fat to block your to damage your brain and damage your body. Now we're going to move on to good habits. Feeding yourself the right food is a start, but it's not enough. You're going to maintain good habits to enhance everything that you eat and not destroy it. Treat your body well, and your brain shall be rewarded. Exercise and sleep. This is something that I really don't go over much. I don't think there's a huge amount to do. It's pretty basic and simple. 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week is good for most people. All you got to do is stay active. If you live in a house and you mow the lawn every weekend and you work in the garden, that's staying active. If you sit on the couch all day and play video games and watch TV, that's not staying active. You will realize if you start working out just lightly how much of an impact it has on your body, on your stress, on your stamina, even on your happiness. So, light workouts with walking, light muscle strengthening, and stretching. Stretching is important if you're going to sit in a long tournament at a casino. Sleep your 7 to 9 hours of light. Everybody requires different amounts. Usually the average is 8, but get the right amount of sleep. I know that there are players that love to play the 28, 48, 3-day sessions, and they brag about it. Please don't. Stick to 8 hours playing, then go do something else, and then get 8 hours of sleep. Your brain needs it. Don't try to be a superhero and play a long session. The bad players will be there the next day. guaranteed. What is the impact of proper sleep and exercise? Improves your brain functions. Yes, it does. If you get the right amount of sleep, your brain is set in the morning, it's refreshed, it's reset, it's ready to go. Exercise also increases your brain function. Exercise and sleep reduce stress. They keep you physically healthy and alert. They increase your stamina for those long casino games. They also produce good chemicals in the body that lead to a positive attitude. I know I have to work out. When I don't, I start feeling a little bit sad. When I work out, I feel happy. So keep that in mind. Very important. Good game day habits. Preparations before the game. If you're going to play at a casino or if you play online, work out and then relax the brain before playing. Watch some comedy. That would be my suggestion. If you watch TV, see something positive. Don't see bad news. Don't see a horror movie. Don't see any of that. That type of stuff impacts your brain. Don't play in physical discomfort. If you want to, even listen to some relaxing like music. There's some massage music out there that's very soothing, kind of stuff that you would find if you went to a massage therapy place or a physical therapy place. Play only when you are feeling well, feeling physically and mentally well. Don't play hungry, don't play tired, don't play angry, don't play upset, don't play with worries on your mind. If you're going to be like that, then don't play. Be comfortable when you're playing. If your seats are terrible at your casino, bring a cushion. There's no embarrassment about it. Just bring it and sit on it. Or figure out what's a good position for you to sit in the chair. I switch my positions constantly when I'm at a casino. I put the chair backwards or forwards, and I do different ways. That way I don't strain my muscles in one style the whole time. If you listen to music, listen to relaxing music. Now, I'm going to say this. This only applies to online play. I would not recommend listening to music while you play at a casino because you're going to miss a lot of information. Have the proper equipment. If you play online, have a good computer, have a good chair, have a good desk, good monitor, good mouse, have the right software, have everything that you need. Make sure everything is set up perfectly, and make sure there's no distractions. Turn your phone off, put a sign on your door, playing, please don't bother me. Whatever you need to do, don't have any interruptions. An example I can give, because I have a wife and a child, I can't avoid having interruptions, is that my neighbor comes downstairs sometimes, and there were some instances where she interrupted me during a poker hand, and it actually cost a stack once. So try not to have interruptions. Now the last, if you play at a casino, bring notepads or an iPad or an iPod, snacks, sweaters, glasses, water or visors, whatever you need to. Bring whatever you need to the casino so you are comfortable playing, so you feel well. Now a little side note on hats and visors. I prefer a visor over a hat. Your brain is part of your body. You don't want to overheat it or cool it too much. There is an optimum temperature for you to play. You just have to figure it out yourself, where your brain is going to maximize its potential. For me, I can't have my head too hot or too cold, so I wear a visor. If I put a hat on, I get overheated. I can't think right. A visor is also good because it blocks out everything above your eyesight and lets you focus only on the table. You're not distracted by the TV or a good-looking waitress with a very low-cut shirt. So, last on the list, have good sex. Yes, it is important. It gets rid of that certain need inside of your body. That way, if you play at a casino, you are not having wandering eyes looking at some of the women there. If you play online, a sudden thought of sex comes in your brain, or you have you get bored and you have a tendency to open up a browser and look at, whatever it is that you look at. But these are my suggestions. Good sex also releases stress from your body and it relaxes you. Live play preparation. So this is really going to focus a lot on live play. Which casino? What to consider. All this stuff goes into how much money you make per hour. It is all factored in. Some people might not agree with me. I think it is 100% accurate. First off, consider the rate. Is it a drop or a percentage? Over where I live in California, it is a drop, so the play has to adjust. In Florida, it is a percentage, but also the percentage of the drop, however much it is, affects how much money you make directly because they're taking more out of the pot each time. The field, is it soft, is it hard, is it aggressive if it's passive? If it's hard and aggressive, maybe you don't want to play at that casino. If it's soft and passive, you know that your variance will be lower and you'll make a lot of money. So consider all these things, how the field is in your casino. How far is it to drive there? Sometimes a good casino is just simply too far to drive, and you have to make another selection. Or the close casino really has too many disadvantages for you to stay there. An example I will give is that there are two casinos over here. One that is very nearby my house, but the rate of the drop is absurd. It's $6. And the way that the players play is that the limp is doubled. It's $4 for the low limit game, and a lot of players buy in short. So racing with them is negative money, period, of the story. Well, there's another casino that is twice as far away, but the rate is lower. It's only, the drop is lower. It's only $4. People buy in for full stacks, and the players are more passive. So there's a choice in my casino. Unfortunately, the farthest casino has I have to pay a $5 toll on the way back, but the choice is clear. I would rather go to the far casino because it's much more profitable for me than the close casino. Tables. Does your casino have plenty of tables? Are there auto shufflers, or do they do it by hand? That extra hand or two an hour makes a difference. The number of tables and the waiting time makes a difference. At my close casino, I have to wait up to 45 or 50 minutes for a table. At the far casino, I only have to wait at most 20 minutes. So it pretty much cuts down my time. What are the comps at your casino? Some casinos give comps, some don't. Some give free water, some don't. Consider all these things. Whatever's important to you, that's what you have to consider. How good is the food quality? Can you stay at your casino, ask for all good alternatives, and keep yourself healthy and fit and set with a proper mind focus playing your game? If they offer no good choices, then maybe it's time for either you to bring your own food or go to another casino. And consider the time that if you take a break from play and go out of the casino and find good food and come back. All consider these things. One player in my poker group, my discussion group, he brings a cooler to the back of his car, and he takes a break and he goes outside and gets some sunshine and eats his lunch there. I think that's a pretty novel idea. The staff, are there good dealers, good service, and good security? I mean, you don't want, first off, good dealers. I don't want to sit there and have to worry about a bad dealer missing all this information and not calling out who's called, who hasn't, how many players are in the hand, when it's my turn and when or not. I've seen bad dealers and I've made mistakes because I can't focus on everything at once. Not only does it force your brain to use more of its power in focusing on something that you shouldn't, but when you make a mistake, it can cost you. A good dealer will take care of the table things for you. They'll say, hold on, sir, it is not your turn to go if you make a mistake. That's a good thing. So you want good deals, good dealers. Good service. I think that's given by the statement right there. You have good waitresses, you have good staff, good floormen, people that you can work with. Want that kind of stuff. Security. You don't want to have a big winning session and have to worry about walking out to the parking lot and getting mugged. Pretty simple there. Next, can you bring your own drinks and snacks? Now, in any casino that I have been in, I was able to. Perhaps there's some that you can't. Now, one thing about bringing your own drink, like I said, I bring it in my Conseco coffee mug. I bring water. That way I just refill and I don't have to tip a waitress. That's $1 I save every time. So during an 8-hour session, that's probably $3. Take only the cash you intend to play with. Don't take any credit cards. Whatever you plan to lose, that's what you take. All this stuff adds up to cost analyzing your casino and your situation for the best overall win rate. Think about this. This is something that I'm probably going to cover in a different video, but I just want to hit on it really quick here. Discipline during a hand. Plan your play. This is one of the most important things that you can do. I used to think pretty quick through my hands, and it was basically shooting me in the foot. Now I have forced myself, and I have set up a systematic process for going through everything, pre-flop and post-flop, or whatever game I'm playing, to think about my decision before I act rashly. It has improved my decision-making skill, I would say, 7-fold. Before, where I would think things really fast, I'd make a lot of mistakes. But once I sit down and I just go through the process, I think about what the ranges are, what the equity I have, how can I maximize my profits when I bet, can I bluff, all these things. When I go through this whole field of motion in my head, allows me to calm down, allows me to figure out what the right play is. And sometimes I'll pick up something on an opponent or somebody will act out of turn, which is beneficial to me. If you want to start with the basis, go to Professional No Limit Volume 1. They have an excellent section on REM, range, equity, and maximize. You want to take a look at that. That's a process to think through to play your hands. Focus on the game. Don't ponder about past hands if you got a beat. If it bothers you, write it down or put it in your iPad and then forget about it. You can worry about it later. Take a moment, just sit there, punch in the hand, what happened, who it was, blah, 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 and forget about it or write it down. You don't want to sit there pondering on the hand and make yourself upset. Did I do the right play? Did I did not do the right play? Did I mess up? Forget about it. Just focus on the game. Everything in the past doesn't matter. Well, doesn't matter anymore except for patterns and betting styles of your opponent. But forget about the hand if you lost or if you won or whatever. Review it later. Take breaks and time your eating. What you want to do is take occasional breaks, occasional breaks when you feel tired. You also want to time your food breaks before you get hungry. You don't want to get hungry and say, "Golly, I need to order some food." Then you get the waitress over, which, as you know, usually takes 15 minutes, and you order some food. Takes another 15 minutes, and she brings it to you. You have to eat it, and then it takes another 15 minutes for your body to process it and convert the energy for your brain. Well, in that 45 minutes that you waited after you were hungry, your brain efficiency went down and you can make a mistake. So figure out what your body is used to. For me, it's about 4 hours. So after 3 hours and 30 minutes, 3 hours and 15 minutes, I'll get the waitress over and I'll order my food. So by the time my food comes, I'm starting to be hungry and I will eat it and I'll maintain my steady energy level. Eat before your brain gets tired. That's the point. Tilt control. A lot of people have problems with tilt control. Let's look at some physical causes. Being tired, drunk, in pain, or illness. All of those things are physical causes of tilt control. Eating incorrectly and having your brain misfire and malfunction because you're not giving your brain the proper nutrients. Leading a sit-down life where you sit on the couch and you just watch TV or play video games all day. Not good. Bad poker environment. In the past, it might have been poker rooms with smoking. Now it could be poker rooms with chairs, with bad chairs. I know in the Borgata, their chairs are awesome. They're wonderful chairs. I could sit there all day. But in the Taj Mahal, this is in Atlantic City, their chairs are awful and they break my back. So that's something about bad poker environment. Mental. The one at the top of the list, I think, is the most dangerous, money fear. Money fear is basically playing underrolled or afraid you're going to lose your money. And you know you have money fear when the first thing that goes through your brain is, I hope I don't get raised. Wow, that's a big bet. I don't want to spend that much on calling this call. When your first intuition is fear about how much you got to spend, you have money fear tilt. And that'll severely impact your winnings. It'll turn you into a very predictable, weak player. You want to get rid of that. If you don't feel comfortable playing at the limit that you're playing, lower your limit until you are not afraid to check raise river bluff. If you're playing no limit, for example, you have to have an absolute disregard for money and just have no fear with it. And if you make a mistake and you shove all in and you make a mistake, then you make a mistake on a bluff, and that's it. And you have to toss that out the window. Who cares? Anger, worry, overconfidence. Overconfidence is the big one that I see in young players. They have egos the size of the state of Texas. They got to get rid of their egos. There's no need for ego in poker. My philosophy is, all I worry about is being better than everyone at the table, or better than most. And if somebody's better than me, making sure he's on my right. I used to think, wow, I'm in the top 10% of players, or I'm in the top 15. I threw that all out. I don't think anything anymore. I just say I suck. And I just look at the table that I sit at. I'm like, do these people suck worse than I do? Awesome. I can make some money here. So that's how you should be thinking. Lack of study. Poker is a never-ending experience of learning. It doesn't make a difference how good you get. You can always get better. Every seasoned player has said this. You can always get better. You can always learn. Don't ever stop studying. I'm surprised at myself how every single year I learn something new. I learn a new trick. I learn a new body language tell. I learn a new way to manipulate the pot. I learn a new tactic. It's just every single year. It's amazing. So never stop studying. Now, recently, somebody brought up an interesting subject to me, and I really thought about this and did a little bit of research on it. Sometimes you get mad when playing poker, either online or at a casino. And I thought, well, why is it that you get mad? I mean, everybody's prone to tell, and they get upset at one thing or another. And I find that sometimes if you realize why you're getting mad, then you can calm yourself down. So, I came up with basically 3 reasons. You're mad at yourself for making a mistake or having poor discipline at a table. You're upset with yourself. Oh, I made a stupid play. I made this, I made that, I made the other, I did this, I did that. My God, I should have gotten up. Once you realize that, you might calm down. Poor loser. That goes back to ego. Some people, they just don't like to lose. And you just got to remove that. There's no other way to say it. And it's really tough to realize you're a poor loser and it's not something else. But once you do, maybe you'll change the way that you think and you'll get rid of that type of anger from your system. Now, the last one is something that I think a lot of people have. Contempt for other players when they beat you. And usually that is anger toward bad players. When they play illogically, when they outdraw you, get rid of that. Contempt for bad players or contempt for any other player is horrible. That'll destroy your game. If they beat you, they beat you. And that's it. That's all you got to tell yourself. And to give you an idea, because a lot of people, maybe they get mad on out-leveling an opponent or over-leveling an opponent. Most opponents will only think on level 2, even professional ones. It's very rare to have somebody think on a level 3 or level 4 or level 5 in your game. So always keep that in mind. Research. Videos, books, articles. Watch and read as many as you can. There are some online professionals out there that believe a lot of the older books are just garbage now. They're out of date, they don't make any more sense, they don't apply to the current game. This is what I'm going to tell you. Every book applies to everything. Why? Because not only can it teach you what is out of style, it could teach you a little itty-bitty trick. Like, a lot of people don't like Phil Hellmuth's books. They say they're horrible, they're horrendous, they're silly. But I picked up one itty-bitty thing from a Phil Hellmuth book that always stays in the back of my mind. He was making a statement about comparing 5'6" student to 5'4" student. I said, well, what the hell's the difference? In his book, he stated, well, when you have 5'6" suited and a wheel flops, you're going to beat any ace and you're going to stack him. When you have 5'4" suited and a wheel flops, a lot of the time you might tie. And also, he has a few of your outs if he has an ace. I was like, you know what? That makes a difference. And it doesn't make a huge difference. It makes a tiny difference. But once you take little itty-bitty pieces of information like this from all books, it adds up to a lot of positive itty-bitty pieces. That is a net gain. Is a big net gain. I have a poker pro friend of mine that lives in Las Vegas and he plays live. And when I first met him, I said, how did you learn poker? He said, I watched Celebrity Poker. You know, that old show with Phil Gordon. And I said, what on earth could you possibly learn from Celebrity Poker? He said, I learned what not to do. And now he's very successful and he makes a career at playing pro. So never disregard a book. Also keep this in mind. Let's say you've read a book that a lot of people consider are out of date, like Super System. And you come across a table and some guy just over here and say, hey, you know, I've read Super Systems, I know how to play. Well, now you know, wow, this guy thinks on that kind of scale, and you can totally adjust your game. So look at it that way. Now, when reading material, don't take everything as verbatim. Remember, poker is fluid. There are a lot of people that post, a lot of people that put out videos that, you know, sometimes their ideas are not really that good, or they don't apply to what they're mentioning to. A lot of people get stuck in their own type of game and their own type of style, and it's very hard for them to see out of that style. And so something that might apply to them doesn't apply to you. So really sit there and consider what you are watching and what you are reading. Software. Get all the software if you play live or online. That way you can train yourself and put in different situations. Like Flopzilla and PokerStove are excellent pieces of software to determine, wow, you know, what happens if I have aces and somebody has 7-6? What is this flop? What is that flop? How many outs do they have? What do they draw out? What can they pick up? They're two awesome pieces of software. Hold'em Manager, Poker Tracker for online play, AHK scripts for making it easier to play online. My poker coach, he plays 16 tables. I'm like, how on earth can you possibly play 16 tables? And he has software that helps him, and it makes it a lot easier for betting. So these are all things that make life simpler online. Consider these things. Online poker selectors, same thing. So look at all the software out there. There's good and there's bad, and pick ones that will help you improve your game. Training, coaches, training sites, and learning groups. Learning groups are always good, even if you're the best player on there. Teaching is a way to increase your knowledge. If you see a bad player, or let's say you're in a group and there's a bunch of people that are worse than you, and you see this common pattern in them, well, you're going to identify that common pattern in other bad players. And while you teach them, you're going to actually learn something. You can learn something from players that are worse than you, believe it or not. I always learn from bad players on what they do and what not to do and how certain things work within the system. Training sites are very good. You have all sorts of good players that provide different videos on different subjects or even the same game that bring you different perspectives based on their play style on how to do things. And if you take all that information and put it within yourself and come up with your own play style, you're going to be doing really well. And don't underestimate the power of coaches. Yes, they are expensive. For a while, I didn't want to get a coach, and I sadly got one that was really, really bad, and it messed up my game. But I finally found one under the recommendation of two very good players that is now my coach, and he really opened my eyes to different things that would have taken me years to figure out on my own. So don't underestimate paying a lot of money for a very good coach. And if you want good coaches for low limit or high limit, I'll be happy to recommend some to you. Next part, critically think. Most people don't do this. Each player has their own style. Learn from others and adapt. That's what I was talking about before about videos. No one style is correct and each plays differently. Poker is fluid. Always remember that. Just because you have ace-king off in the big blind and there's 5 limpers doesn't always mean you want to raise it, for example. Testing. Try new strategies slowly. You don't want to suddenly go, wow, I'm a nit. I'm going to play like a lag. No, you don't want to do that. You want to introduce your hands very slowly and adjust to it. Remember that if you play one style, let's say nit, for example, people are playing with you, playing versus you a certain way. You know how to manipulate that style. If you suddenly switch over to loose aggressive, you're not going to be sure how to handle it. So you want to slowly introduce hands. You want to slowly change the way that you play, and ease in the new strategies so you can get used to it. And once you go from one range to another, now you know all the ways to beat it and all the ways to play it, and you can adjust in any direction. But take everything slowly. Now, one thing that really helped me out a lot was review. Not only review my hands, but review your opponents for leaks and patterns. One thing that very clearly put my coach's training into perspective for me was taking all the opponents that I play against online and looking at all their hands. I mean, it was like thousands of hands. I saw a lot of people that were regulars and they were losing, and it seemed like they had good stats. And when I went over their hands, I found some very common patterns in them, and just suddenly a light bulb went off. And now my decisions are far easier. So take your opponents, research their hands, look for patterns or leaks. You will find an amazing amount of patterns between all your opponents. The ones that are not winning, the ones that are regs, and they have a minor win rate, you'll see a very common pattern that you can exploit. Games. Different games play differently. Online casino, East Coast, West Coast. The rake affects the game. Bad beat jackpot affects the game. No flop, no drop. Max rake and a drop. They all affect how the game plays. In one casino where I live, you don't want to steal the blinds really. You just don't. The only way that you want to is with a good hand and they're fish in the blinds. But there's bad players in the blinds. Because the rake they take pre-flop is so horrible, it's not worth stealing. In another casino, it is worth stealing. The rake is low, and you could steal away. So everything depends. Everything depends on the players. Some of you might know that the difference between Bodog and Merge are vastly different when you play their games there. On Bodog, they're very loose, and they're more like live casino players. On Merge, they're very tight, and they're more solid, taggish types. So I play on both sites, and I have to play 2 different styles on both sides according to the game there. So always consider, always be thinking. Now we're going to move into unseen factors, awareness of cheating, effects of age, and personality within poker. Age. Now, perhaps some of you younger players are going to be like, what on earth does this have to do with anything? Well, because you said that statement, That's exactly what it has to do with it. And I'll say this up front. A lot of young players I talk to don't have the realization to understand how age affects life and how age affects poker games, just from a perspective of wisdom. So I put in some points over here, and I put a little drawing at the bottom, and hopefully this will open your mind to it. So keep an open mind. Young players, they're going to look at their advantages. They have stamina, they have speed, they have multitasking, they have increased learning and adaptation. Their disadvantages are they're emotional, they have a huge ego, they have lack of discipline, they have weak people skills, they're idealists, and they're easier to read. For me, when I go to a casino, a young player is far easier to read than an older player. A young player has a huge ego. A young player is more prone to tilt. They get very emotional. But their ability to multi-table, their ability to learn poker is just amazing. It really is. I believe there was one gentleman that was playing 24 S&Gs at once on PokerStars, and PokerStars thought he was a bot and was going to ban his account, and he videotaped himself playing 24 single table tournaments at once. They couldn't believe it. They thought he was a computer. This is a very young guy, and if I don't remember his name, but I believe he's very talented. Older players, their advantages is patience, observation, strong people skills, wisdom, pragmatists, and they're harder to read. Doesn't mean they're impossible, it just means they're usually harder, especially the old men. I have learned patience with age, and I believe my wisdom has grown quite a bit. And intuitively, instinctively, your people skills will grow with age. Everybody, the human race, is very well at reading other humans because we deal with them every single day, unless you live in a closet your whole life. So those type of things will develop with age. When you're young, you don't have it as much. You have to be trained in it. And even then, there's some things that are very, very hard to train. Disadvantages. Older people have difficulty with change. They get tired faster. They have health issues that can impact play. I have a sciatic nerve, so in the right type of casino, it makes me hard to sit down for a long period of time. They have more personal responsibility when it comes to family and debt and so forth like that. So your personal world at the bottom. In your 20s, you don't have much. I remember when I was in my 20s, all I had to worry about is the job that I had. I lived at home with my parents, and there was always food on the table. I could do whatever I want. My world was small. No stress, except for school. As you get older, you start getting things like personal liability, develop social skills, life skills. You have a family, you have kids, you have your wife, you have to compromise with other people. You might have a family crisis, somebody gets sick. Now you're balancing a mortgage, a car payment. Oh, there's a medical bill, you have to get an operation for your kid. All these things play into your life. So as you get older, you see that bubble gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So the way that I could basically say this in the most simplest form is imagine a 20-year-old being a two-dimensional being and a 40-year-old being a three-dimensional being. And the three-dimensional being is in a two-dimensional world. And he is trying to explain what a three-dimensional world is to a two-dimensional being. It's impossible. It's very, very hard. So that's how I see it. A lot of young players, they just don't understand this concept. Some do, but a lot don't. So hopefully I explained this enough for you guys to understand where it is. So if you're a young player, now you have an idea how to exploit the older people. Cheating. This is something that is very important. Maybe some of you already know it. Maybe some of you are naive to it. But I'll go over it. Good and bad games. What is a safe game? Safe game is large organized places with lots of people. Unsafe games are usually small groups of infrequent games with the same players and possibly the owners playing in it. A good place is a place where owners put in a lot of money to make players feel comfortable. Food, drinks, TV. They have security. They send out advertisements for their casino. They have a secure and publicly well-known place that everybody can go to. Everybody knows where it's at. If it's licensed, it's usually a good place. So you don't have to worry. So big casinos are a very, very safe place. Small places you have to be careful. You have to watch out for things. Let's take a look at some of the things that maybe a place that's not so reputable has. The person who runs the game plays in it. There was one local game that I was in that the husband and wife played in the game. And they would run like multi-table tournaments of 25 men. And, you know, they'd make money off of this. And there's a secret place you got only invite. Well, I was noticing that they were shifting chips to each other during the tournaments, and they would play and deal. And I never played there again. So, and it was, to me, it was kind of obvious that they were cheating. Small games where a select group of players always come up. There was another game that I went to, it was a limit game, 10-20. You always had the same 5 players at the table. And they were, at the time, quite a bit better than the typical player you would find in the casino. And they always had 4 random people that showed up. Well, the other 5 players played against the 4 random people. You would see things like somebody would bet a good hand, you see a raise and a re-raise, and the first guy would fold, and both the raiser and the re-raiser would have nothing and check it down. And one would win the pot with ace high or king high. So these are things you got to watch out for. Ask what the rake is and watch the rake pulled from the game. I've been to a game where the dealers pulled more rake than they should have. Signaling with their hands or with their voice. Chip placing on different sides of the cards to signal what they have. Use a foreign language or strange phrases. At a local casino, I was told that there are a group of dealers that collude, and they say really bizarre things at the table to let the other players know that they're in collusion with who has the high and who has the low, an Omaha high-low. Another one is bottom dealing from the deck. It's something you saw, you learn in rounders, but I've never seen it, but it is possible. After winning a session, the people that are running the game try to get you to stay longer. Bet and raises between players that make no sense. I talked about a little bit ago about the raise and the re-raise with no hand, making the good hand fold. Harassments and distractions at the table. For example, 2 players colluding and one keeps talking to you during a hand trying to make you make a mental mistake. So how do you handle a crooked game? Well, one thing is, let's say it's a small game and maybe not a large community of poker players like in a certain city, smaller city. You might want to keep it quiet, not raise the alarms, and just tell select people to avoid the game. If you are in a large casino, then what you could do is tell the staff, tell management, tell the floor if there's something going on. And the most important thing, trust your instincts. If a game doesn't feel right, then most likely it isn't. Personality. Personality does affect how people play, how people feel, how they tilt, how they think. Now, I'll put a chart at the bottom, a little picture. These are extremes that I put down here. Nobody is one extreme or another. Strengths and weaknesses. Your personality affects how you play, your comfort level, and your style. Each person is unique with their own strengths and weaknesses. Knowing to use your strengths and reduce your weaknesses impacts you play severely. No one plays perfect poker, even the pros. All players are still human, and they do make mistakes. They do get frustrated, and they go on tilt. Even the pros again. So we all get dealt the same cards. So don't stress out over things. Now, let's take a look at the far ends of the personality. Do somebody that's just completely emotional, and on the other side, somebody completely flat. Usually, most people, just about all people, will fall somewhere in the middle, on one leaning or another, in some factors or another. And but it's good to know what type of person you are. If you lean more toward the emotional, your advantages are going to be tilt realization. You're like, wow, I'm on tilt. You're going to be able to detect better body language. And the reason is because emotional people are more in touch with themselves, and more introspective. And game psychology, they know how to affect other people. An emotional person is Phil Hellmuth, is Tony G. Those are emotional players, and they take advantage of their abilities. On the other end, what's bad about being a more emotional player? Your discipline, your tilt control, and mathematics. Emotional people sometimes lack in a discipline area. Also, tilt control. They might realize they're on tilt, but they don't know how to stop it. They don't know how to control it. And some players might not be as good as math. They're more people persons. They like to deal with people instead of just sitting behind a book in the corners doing more technical things. On the other side, you have a flat personality. More flat people, more kind of like, if you ever met anybody that's a very like stone face, it just doesn't react to much and just always the same emotion. They have a lot more discipline. They probably have a very set pattern in their day. Tilt control. They have excellent tilt control once they realize it. They know how to fix it. And they're usually very technical or very good at mathematics. The bad things that they don't have is tilt realization. I've seen, actually I've spoken to a young professional that went from online to live after Black Friday. And he used to play 200 NL online, which is pretty high level. I mean, it's involves a lot of thinking there. And he played 1-3 live, which should be easy for him. Well, he's lost 20, 30, 40 buy-ins, and he doesn't figure out why. He thinks he's just unlucky. And he seems to be a very math-oriented player, very unemotional, but all he sees is that he's gotten unlucky. And I try to tell him, you're doing something wrong. You know, you can't lose that much in live, and it's not something that you're doing, but he thinks it's only luck. So he hasn't realized what's going on. But once he does, I'm sure that he would fix it. But what he did do is that he shifted his games. He went to live multi-table tournaments, and he's doing very well now. So tilt realization. That's flatter people have a problem with realizing their own tilt. Tell reads. They don't believe in this kind of stuff. They just don't. You know, there's a lot of guys I talk to, they're very flat. It's like, reads aren't anything. It's all about math. They're a very tiny, tiny, tiny portion of the game. Well, in my opinion, they're not. Some cases yes, some cases no. I'll give you an example. I watched the 50K tournament where the final table was Helmuth and Rask, and I watched it with the face cards down. I watched it pre-recorded. I watched 3 hours of it. And that whole time, I picked up 1 tell on Phil and 2 on Rask. And that's it. And I consider myself a pretty good reader of tells. Now, you put me at a local game, there's a bunch of bad players, and most of the time I'll pick up 4 to 5 minor things and 1 major thing when I'm in a hand. A lot of times I don't pay attention to it because it doesn't make a difference what tells I have. My 7-2 off isn't going to play. So, as you can tell, I'm more on the emotional side. Game psychology. Again, they usually focus within themselves. They pay attention to their game. They pay attention to the math, to the game theory. They don't focus on the table talk. So these are the differences. Everybody has different things. And yes, you could be an emotional person who's good at math, or you could be a flatter person who's good at reading people. These are just tendencies, and I put the extreme on both ends. So you just identify yourself and figure out where you kind of fall. Do you fall leaning one way? Do you fall leaning another? What are your strengths and weaknesses? That's basically what this addresses. What are you good at? What are you aren't? Protect your weaknesses, enhance your strengths. Okay, so that's pretty much summing it up. So we're going to go through the summary of discipline. Have a good bankroll for what you do. Remember, money fear to me is the biggest tool you're going to have. Do your research, do your homework. Pick good games. Pick good online casinos. Pick good live casinos. Do your exercise, do your nutrition, understand what good and bad is, treat your body right, get the right amount of sleep, set up your good game day habits. What I like to do is I make a list of everything I want to take to the casino. I'm absent-minded. I have to have a list. Sometimes I actually lose the list of what I know to take. Do I want to take a jacket? Yes, I do. I always do because casinos sometimes can get cold. I take my own drinks. I take my iPad, or my iPod, I'm sorry, or whatever else I have, my own snacks. So make a list. Combating tilt. Try to figure out what makes you mad at the poker table, what drives you nuts, how to get yourself out of tilt. If you need to take a break, take a break. Go outside, get some sunshine. If you're playing online, figure out what your brain can handle as a session. For me, I am at best at 1 hour sessions online, then I take a break, and then I come back, play another 1 hour session, and so on. So figure out what you're good at. At a live game, I can play 8 hours, not a problem. So different things for different systems for different people. Hand play. Set up your system of how you go through a hand, how you process things through. It'll help you with tilt. If you have a process set up, then that process kicks in before the tilt does, and it can help you out with it. I know from personal experience. Focus. Focus, focus, focus. I can't stress that enough. When you're playing poker, focus on the poker. Don't focus, if you're playing online, don't have 12 tables open and you're surfing the internet. Get rid of the internet. Don't have somebody talking over your shoulder. Don't be on the phone. All these things affect your play and your judgment. I got distracted last week at a poker table, and I missed a very important hand from a loose aggressive player on reading his body language, reading his betting patterns, and how he plays against another certain player. And I was kicking myself in the butt for it. Keep yourself in a positive mental and physical state, and study and critically think. Identify and exploit different aspects of age, of personality types, how people are, what their mood is, what their disposition is. Remember that realization light bulb, depending on the situation. Remove yourself from a bad situation. There have been times where I've been running so bad in the game, and I noticed that the bad players have adjusted. They're playing a little bit differently, or at least it seems like, but I haven't figured out their spot yet. And it might take me too long to figure it out. So I just ask for another table, and I just go somewhere else, and everything gets reset. Keep an eye for crooked games. At one of my local casinos that I play at, there's an angle shooter. He's not a very good player, but he does different things that are severe angle shootings. And no limit, he'll come to the end of a hand. None of the cards and none of the bets are made. And let's say somebody puts a bet into him, and he says, "All right, let's see him. I got a straight." And then the other guy folds after betting. Well, he didn't show his hand. He didn't flip it over, and he didn't call the bet. Because the guy mucked, the pot instantly shifts over to him. That's angle shooting. So watch out for that kind of stuff in a game. Recommended books. This is for the mind, not game theory. Elements of Poker by Angelo. Very good book. Very good positive book on how to treat poker, how to treat people, and how to keep your brain in a good discipline. Ace on the River. Some people have different books that kind of like make that light bulb light up. Aha! Of how to be at a table, how to put your mind in a certain disposition, how to treat other people. For me, it was Ace on the River. The basic thing that Barry says is, when you're at a poker table, you are there to entertain the players. Entertain the bad players. That's what you're there for. That's what they're playing. Enjoy yourself. There's no reason to berate them, to say bad things or nasty things. Be social. That's what poker's about, and that's how I feel. Tao of Poker. I read that for a little bit. It didn't do much for me, but for some other people it might. I have not read the book Poker, Gaming, and Life by Sklansky and Malmuth, but I heard it is a very, very good book. Inside the Poker Mind by John Feeney. A strategy of approaching games, the psychology of it, the mental state of it, how to treat the players. Very, very good book if you play live poker. You Staying Young is more of a health book. I recommend it. I study nutrition all the time about what is in and what is out. The You Staying Young book tells you in layman terms and in technical terms how things affect your body, how your body works, everything you need to know, really. So I would recommend those. What's coming up next? At the start of this video, I said that I made a condensed video of all the things listed here. And that by the recommendation of some pros, I broke it up. So, my next video is going to be on poker table psychology. How to deal with the players at your table. It wouldn't apply so much to online, but for live games it will apply very much. How to take advantage, how to listen, how to say certain things, how to pay attention to what people are saying and exploit what they say. The one after that is going to be body language and tells exactly what it is. The body and the mouth and the eyes and the mind, everything a poker player does at a table gives away the strength of his hand. The weaker the worse the player, the more tells they give off. The better the player, the less. The other two videos that I'm going to make, I'm thinking about, one is structured thinking on how to formulate a system to go through a hand, which is what I was talking about, to come up with a pattern of play for what to do. And it's probably going to be a short video. And the last one I call the psychologicality poker. Now, a lot of players are very mathematical players, but a lot aren't. And maybe they don't understand the full intensity of what the math represents in books like Mathematics of Poker. Even it takes me about 4 or 5 readings to understand what they are saying on one page, and then I forget it 3 pages later anyways. So what I would like to do is try to come up with a system that combines, for live play and even online, psychology and logic put together on how to formulate your way through a hand. Instead of relying on specific numbers and specific this and specific that. It's for the non-math poker player. I guess you would call it maybe the field player. And hopefully I can make something that makes poker easier for you, for the type of player that is like that. So these are the ones that I'm looking at making. The first two are definite, and the last two I'm considering. Now, donations. I don't ask for anything heavy. I do like feedback. I have an email there, which is misspelled apparently. I should say fuzzypuppoker@gmail.com. F-U-Z-Z-Y, not fuzzu. So that's a misprint right there. I just noticed it. If you want to send me your feedback on the video, donations would be greatly appreciated. The information I put in over here took years to put together. Lots of books to read. I've read over 50 books in poker and poker psychology and game theory. So it does take time. My other videos will take time too to assemble, many, many, many hours, and review of the information that I have. So any donation would be totally very, very nice. My ultimate guide would be to put in an even more detailed book later on. That's just very straightforward, no buffer and no BS. And I will offer this. Anybody that puts in a donation of $25 or more, I'll happily spend an hour with them on the phone, or if they are in the Bay Area, I'll happily go with them to a casino and watch them and tell them if they have any poker tells or anything that I noticed about them. Much appreciated. So, that's it for this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. And if you didn't, remember, hopefully you picked up some little tidbit that would help you in your poker game. For now, I wish you all luck at the tables, no matter what game you play. And as always, be happy.